Okay, here we go. Take one. There's no other take, so I don't know why I fucking do that. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Modern Samurai Project podcast, also known as the Get Better podcast. Today, we are joined by Jim Dexter. I'll give you a brief thing. So I've known, what is going on, like almost 3 years, 2 years?
I don't know at this point.
Whenever the August 2016.
Yeah.
August 2016, because I was the Friends of Pat Rogers inaugural event there, and that's when we first met. So Jim is a former fireman. Currently, you are for the city of Elgin or Lisle? I get those confused. Lisle, you live, okay, all right, yeah. So Lisle, Illinois, which is in Chicagoland. You're a member of the Fiat Regional SWAT team, and one of the best looking gingers on the face of the earth, which isn't saying much, right?
It's true. Yeah, you just keep the numbers low and you can be at the top.
Yeah. That being said, dude, what am I missing about your background?
So my background, one of the things is that my entire adult life I've been involved in some way in some form of public safety. At 18 in college, I started on a volunteer fire department and continued as a volunteer firefighter for 10 years, both in Illinois and Wisconsin while I was at college. And then as I started as a full-time police officer, while I was in college, I worked as a part-time police officer in a tiny little village of Vermont, the town of Vermont. Had about 1,100 people in it, and I was the only police officer in that village. So it was kind of a baptism by fire into law enforcement and figuring things out kind of for yourself. I was at Western Illinois University at the time, left there to go to the City of Madison Police Department, where I spent just about 4 years there, serving as a patrol officer on the west and south sides. Left that to come back home. Got a job with the Federal Air Marshal Service, where I spent 4 years. Spent 4 years out of the Chicago field office with them, both in flying and in their tactical team or their Viper team on my last year, working mostly with the Chicago Police Department downtown in mass transit. And then decided that that really wasn't quite for me and where I belonged, that I really missed being on the street and working a beat and being a little bit more involved in a community and having a little bit more say over the path of my training and other officers' training, where it wasn't so centrally curriculum as the federal government is. So I left there and now with the Village of Lisle Police Department, where I will remain until retirement. I served 6 years in the Illinois Army National Guard out of Chicago. I got in pre 9/11. Right before I went to college in 2000. So I was in the Guard during pre and then post 9/11. So when I got in, National Guard did 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer, and we all went to college, and there wasn't really a care or concern in the world. I was a military police officer out of Chicago, and then 9/11 happened, and things became a little bit disjointed in the Guard. It was a time that the National Guard had been used like no other time really in the history of the U.S. military and the National Guard. And so we got tasked all over the place right away. 3 days after 9/11, I was called to stateside active duty to provide force protection at one of our armories up in the Chicagoland area. Started that and then went to O'Hare Airport to join the rest of my company for that period of time. Did that for about 9 months, then left there. Went back to school, got called up Iraq, did Iraq 03 to 04, came back, and was like, I got to get out, man, because I don't have a job. Like I knew I wanted to be a cop. Everybody in the application pool in the state of Illinois, you have to be 21. So everybody in the state of Illinois, all the applicants, they were all staying 21 years old, and I was 21, 22, 23. So I made the decision that I needed to get hired somewhere. Madison, Wisconsin was testing on campus. I said, yeah, I'll test there. Why not? And got hired. Left school, went up there. I've since finished my bachelor's while I was in the Air Marshal Service, and then went on to get my master's in criminal justice while I was with the Air Marshal Service. So during that period of time, though, I still served as a volunteer firefighter while I was in Wisconsin. When I moved back to Illinois, continued volunteering in emergency services, and served with Hanover Township's Emergency Services, which is an emergency management agency in Cook County. I did about 4 or 5 years volunteering with them and was their director of emergency management for a little while, but mostly served as their operations deputy chief for about 3 years.
Gotcha. So I guess the question is then, so when are you actually gonna get busy and decide what you want to do with your life? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I left Hanover Township, and I was like, because I moved out of the district area, and I was like, well, I'm like, I guess I'll just kind of relax for a little bit. And then I decided to start a company instead of continuing to volunteer.
There you go. So let's talk about that. Your name of your company
Sure, I
is
own Tactically Sound Training Center.
okay. And what do you specialize in, or what does your portfolio encompass?
So my focus is, I guess, what you would call tac-med, tactical medical stuff, medical interventions at the site of injury or at the site of wounding, and then firearms with a focus on red dot pistol. Big surprise to everyone.
Surprise!
Yeah, surprise. My biggest thing, open enrollment, is I'm a TECC, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care instructor. My company has approved educational content through them, and I teach the guidelines for a first care provider. So the things that every person needs to know, encompassing most of the skills of stop the bleed, bandages, tourniquets, wound packing, those sort of things that people need to know as they go about their everyday life in order to immediately treat life-threatening injuries that they can't wait for other responders to get to them to address.
Okay. So again, it's about the Get Better podcast, right? So why should someone, other than proximity, right? What do you think is unique about you versus all of the other tactical med classes out there? Is that even a term? I guess it's a term.
Yeah, it's a term. I don't know. There's always a buzzword attached to everything. We're actually in the process. I fortunate that I sit on the board of the Illinois Tactical Officers Association, and we're actually currently in the process of putting together a trauma conference. I was just down at Stroger Hospital, which was old Cook County Hospital, meeting with one of the trauma doctors down there yesterday, and we were trying to figure out the name of the conference, and it was like, well, we still have to have a buzzword in there of trauma, which is it's physical harm.
But I think it's for the address, like tactical medicine sounds cool because what it encompasses is if you're going to learn how to put holes in people, you should learn how to patch them back up.
Which is kind of one of the things segueing into why me, why me, and the why me comes down to the why I decided to start a company. It was kind of one of those things where I looked at it and I was very unsure of doing it at first. There's a lot of people out there that know a lot of stuff. And so for me, when I looked at it, it was like, am I really to the point where I bring enough value to someone to take their money? That was a big hurdle. I've been a law enforcement instructor for a long time. I mean, you look at my law enforcement training resume, and it's 2 pages of instructor stuff. But who cares? What does that mean? Great. A cop has to come to me to fill 8 hours of training that their department requires. Who cares? I'm plugging a roster in for that agency. And so for me, making the jump into people paying to come see me was difficult for me. Whether it was a humility thing or a nerves thing, it took a lot of prodding from some close friends of mine to really say, hey, look, you have a product that needs to be out there. You have a background of years of trying and doing these things that people need to know about so that they can better themselves. When I sat down and looked at it and really did look at my background and the things that I've done and the circumstances that I've had and been involved in, I really did realize that I had the ability to bridge the gap between a violent encounter in which someone was injured and me or another patrol officer getting there. Because there's a lot of time in between there that somebody needs to be doing something. And I know what that is. I know what that is from having gone to EMT school and realizing that there was a lot of stuff in there that I was never going to use. that I only need to know a couple things as a police officer and as an initial first responder, as a fire department that didn't also run EMS. And so I never went and finished EMT. I never got the certification. It was hours, and at the time, money that just wasn't worthwhile for me in the path that I was going on. I went to Iraq pre-TCCC. Ended up with my medical background kind of being the de facto medic in my platoon, because our medic went on leave and decided that war wasn't really her thing and just never came back. Didn't know that was a thing that we could do, but apparently it was. And so I was placed in situations where I had to do emergency trauma medicine just as the de facto person, without the knowledge of TCCC, without TECC, without any of those guidelines or things. And so I've seen and done all of the things that have now culminated into TCCC and TECC. In the field, I've seen what works. I'm also a police officer in the sense that in the state of Illinois, especially as a member of ITOA, we are really pushing the rescue task force idea, and that police officers go in and provide initial aid once the threat has been dealt with, and do things like tourniquets, bandages, wound packing, so that we can then bring the fire department in and save the most amount of lives as possible. And so as an active threat and rapid deployment instructor, I bring in those other considerations of violence, where things are going to occur, what's going to happen, what's expected of people, or what should be expected of people. And so I think that one of the things that I bring is the ability for people to have basically a partnership with the responders that are going to be coming in to assist people in saving their lives.
Okay, that's awesome. You know, with that rescue force, because for example, like, you know, you go to matches or you go to events and stuff, and one of the first thing you tell people is, like, you know, you call out the primary, you know, you name the primary, you name the secondary med guy, right? If necessary, you name the guy who's going to be calling, and then you say, like, look, guys, if your inner sheepdog takes over and you have to be the one that calls 911, please just say there was an accident at such and such location, right? Because if you say there was a shooting at that location, SWAT's going to be stacked up and the EMTs are going to be behind it while someone needs medical attention. But if you had that rescue task force, it would be the same thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It would be the same thing. So now you can say whatever you want. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, you know, and that's one of the things too. When I look at, you know, what value do I bring as an instructor, especially when you look at like tac-med stuff. It's like, well, he's a cop. You know, why? How come I'm not going to go? How come there's not a paramedic teaching that? That's because the skills that you need the moment that a violent encounter occurs aren't really paramedic level skills.
Right.
They may graduate to that, but if you can hit that pause button on whatever injury just occurred until they can get to you, then you're going to have a much better chance of survival. You know, one of the things is that with mass hemorrhage and knowing how to put on a tourniquet, knowing wound packing, knowing pressure dressings, you got about 4 minutes. And I'm telling you right now, and a medic's not going to get you in 4 minutes. A cop may not get you in 4 minutes. And so, you know, when we look at community partnerships, you know, coffee with a cop is great. We can sit there and talk about things, but I'd prefer a tourniquet with a cop. You know, wound packing in the beat, so that people can learn these skills and meet us halfway in these sort of responses. Because at the end of the day, you know, saving preventable loss of life is our end goal, no matter what it is. And I think that the only way that we're going to truly get there is through things like Stop the Bleed, through things like TECC first care providers. I say all the time in my classes that first responder is kind of one of those words or phrases that I don't really necessarily agree with how it's attributed, because the first responder is really truly the first person who has the training, ability, and willingness to do something. You should be your own first responder in literally everything that you do, and have the ability and the knowledge, the skills, and the equipment to do that.
Yeah, you are. How does Pat Mack put it? You are your own executive protection detail,
Hmm.
right? Which includes GATS, which includes medical, right? Which includes, escape routes and plans and things of that nature. So, okay. So, before people start shutting off because they don't want to listen to medical shit, which is wrong, right? Let's get more into the firearm stuff, right?
Sure.
So, again, we said before, you and I first met at the 2016 Friends of Pat Rogers, and um, I think we were on the line next to each other having a good time, right?
We were.
Um, we were having a very good time, and so one of the interesting things about you, right? You go through this extensive resume, which every time you tell it to me, I'm like, bro, how old are you again? That you did all that shit. Um, but I think the reason why you and I hit it off is, I'm next to people on the line all the time, whether they're civilians or they're cops and stuff like that. And I don't want to sound like an asshole, but it's true. These days, it takes a lot for me to notice you, right? You get noticed two ways. You have superior skill and talent, or you're unsafe, right? Fortunately, you were not unsafe. So your ability, with the drills we were doing, I did notice you. So which is interesting, right? And I think vice versa, and then we kind of started a friendship from there. So why do you, as a police officer with all your, why do you think your skill level? And I'm going to say that you're not saying that. I'm going to say that, right? Based on many other LE that I know. Why do you think your skill level was so high? Why do you strive to even get better now, knowing that, well, you're better than 99.999% of all human beings, if
Because
that
it
makes
has to
sense?
be.
Okay.
That's it. It has to be. I don't have a choice.
Hmm.
The moment that I decided to be a police officer, the moment that I decided to be a grown ass man, um, it became my responsibility to be the best at that. Yeah, I fully believe, and I'm not the first one to say this. I don't know who it's attributed to, but I gave up the right to not be the best as possible at those skills the moment that I took an oath to be able to perform those duties. I get paid to be the best that I can possibly be at utilizing my firearm the moment that it needs to be utilized. That's it. That's all there is to it. I don't think that there's any other way to think about it. I truly don't, and that encompasses everything. I have a master's degree in criminal justice. That plays into my firearms because it plays into my decision making. Because I know case law, I stay current on case law. I know when and when I can't shoot. I know when and when I can't do one thing versus the other because I have to. It's my responsibility. It's a responsibility that I take very, very seriously. Just as any other person in their job is required to be or strive to be the best that they can be in their given profession, that's just a skill in there that is the ultimate thing that a police officer can do. The ultimate Fourth Amendment seizure is to take someone's life.
Hmm.
Uh, and the context of that is that if I don't do that, someone else or myself may lose theirs. And so the necessity to strive to continue to get better is just that. It's the life that I chose to live, and until I decide not to do it anymore, it's incumbent on me to continue to make myself and others around me better.
Okay. So that's great. And I've seen the fruit of that attitude. I will also, however, tell you that I've met other individuals, again, whether civilian or LE, that have made that same commitment that are not as good as you. What do you think the difference is, though?
The
What?
circles of people that I keep, that
Okay.
I met, I fully attribute that to the people that I surround myself with. Um, I fully believe that every relationship that you have and make has value in it, from the lowest contact on the street to your most treasured friendships and your family.
Mhm.
Um, However, I think that those relationships are put into circles. Your associations, your friendships, and those who really truly drive you. And I think that there's a difference. There's that inner circle in friendships of those who really truly drive you. I've got probably um, two or three text message groups that are really truly the people who drive me. I have kind of my group that drives me to get better, and then I have my group that I send things to that they'll wave the bullshit flag if I'm talking nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
to keep me grounded and to keep me from putting out things that aren't a true product, that are too Instagrammy, and that aren't actually truly information to make people better. A conversation that you and I had is a perfect example of that. I don't remember how long ago it was, but I remember I was getting frustrated about something, some drill or some time or something that I was running, and you commented that I had stepped into a different circle of the people that I was looking at to compare my skills to.
Mm-hmm.
And so where I was at the top of one group of what at the time was that close group of people, I'm now bottom to middle of the next group that I've kind of stepped up into. But the top of that group is
World
elite
class. Yeah.
level world class people. And so I think that it's important that as people strive to get better and train to get better, that they need to um, uh, group their associations correctly as well. Now, the previous group that I associated with and that I was close with, I'm still perfectly good friends with them. They don't even know that they're no longer that group anymore. But my focus and my relationships and what drives me in my training and that drives me in my improvement, it has to go up along with your level of skill.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't remain in that previous group so that you're at the top. I think that's the biggest thing is that people form these groups and they're like, I'm the best of my shooting group. Great, bro. Why don't you find a new group or another group where you're the worst and then work your way up through that group? I think guys stay stagnant and they get in this good enough category, which I think law enforcement especially, I think guys pigeonhole themselves in like, I'm the best in my department. Great. What does that mean? Congratulations.
Yeah, it's all right.
Like, oh,
5 rounds in 5 seconds at 10 feet, bro. I'm good.
right, exactly. Yeah. I got a perfect qual score. I could teach my 5-year-old in 10 minutes to get a perfect score on the
Wow.
on the qual. It's an administrative procedure. You're not actually striving to better yourself. Then you're surrounding yourself in a group so that you feel good about your skills.
So how do you find those people, man? For example, like how do you know what skills are pertinent to you? And when you look at someone, right? I mean, you could find some IG talent that can bust out 3 rounds at 3 yards in less than a second. Is that guy important to you? So, well, I guess what are your uh, discriminating factors in going, yep, that guy I want to talk to, that guy, all sizzle, no steak.
So I'm a big personal contact person.
Mhm.
Um, I like to know the people that I'm getting information from. I like to have talked to them. I like to kind of know what they're about. I won't look at 3 posts and be like, yeah, that guy's good. I'm going to look at 50 posts and look back into your background. Not so that I can know what your background is, not so that I can know what your resume is, because I don't really care about that. I care more about what your purpose is in the information that you're putting out. Um, is it so that you can get a bunch of likes? Is it so that you can have fancy videos out there? Or is it so that you can provide usable information that's going to drive people to training and drive people to get better? I'm a big purpose driven guy. That's everything that I do needs to have a purpose, and the purpose can't be to look flashy. When I look at guys who I'm currently looking at for information and for training with, your Bill Blowers, your Jared Reston. These are men who I have spoken to,
Mhm.
personally, who I fortunate to say that I know them. I know who they are. I know what they're about, and I know that the product that they're putting out is for a specific purpose of getting better, and a path to actual performance, not just to simply just throw things out there here and there.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So let's go with some work that you've done with the red dot on the pistol. By the way, red dots are hard, but you're cheating, and if you get them wet, you will die. So I think I covered most of them. What did I not cover?
They'll fog up because you don't do anything.
Yeah, and your Gucci gun will get you killed in the streets. Buy more ammo. Anyway, so let's talk about your beginnings with RDS on a pistol. Where'd you start? Why'd you go that route? What's that?
Your gun.
My gun at
Yeah.
Friends of Pat.
Yeah.
Were you not shooting a dot at Friends of Pat?
Nope.
Oh, snap. Look at that.
I was shooting a Walther PPQ.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So all those wonderful, smart-ass things you're putting on the internet is my fault.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yep.
Well, I did not know that, man.
Yep.
Oh, all right.
Yep. Yeah. One of the things was that, especially as you look at RDS, it's really regional. In the first off, the accessibility to things firearms in the Chicagoland area just simply isn't the same as other places.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I go out by you, I mean, like when we made that range trip where we just drove around the ranges, and I was like, "Is this for real? This is like the Disneyland of out here,
Yeah.
So the accessibility to those sort of things, just wasn't there. I mean, at all. There was nobody out there, training it. There was nobody in this area doing it. Just simply because there wasn't a market for it. It didn't make sense for somebody to come out here and do this, because most people in this area would have been like, what's that newfangled thing? And they would have said, 2 years ago, all the dumb things that people are still saying now, but there would have been nobody really to disprove it, and nobody local to say, hey, this guy's right here, and he's doing this. So I knew about it, of course, from the interwebs. But I'd never had any firsthand experience with it, and I'm a firsthand experience guy. I think that especially right now, there's too many people out there that are talking that don't have firsthand knowledge of anything.
Of anything.
They've never picked something up. They're speaking about things that they may have heard somebody say, and while that's a consideration, until you've actually done it yourself, I don't think that you have the ability to speak on it. So obviously the circles that I was in at the time were like, yeah, RDS is good. And I was like, cool, it's probably good because I trust what you guys say, but I haven't done it. So I was like, hey, can I shoot your gun? And you were like, yeah, shoot my gun. And I was like, cool. 5 rounds later, this just changed my life. Like, yeah. I'm not going back. I was at the point in shooting and in training that it just made complete and total sense. And I was like, I need to figure this out, bring this back, and we need to be using this. I had kind of already a pretty good book of knowledge in my head about RDS. The only thing that I was waiting on was that final chapter of learning was to pull the trigger of a gun that had one on it, and it reinforced everything that I already knew about it, or thought that I knew. And I was just like, yeah, this is it, man. I mean, why would I not? Why would I not use this?
So technically, your first training session with it was when you flew down and we hung out for the day.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that either. Probably because you picked it up so quick. But, I think that goes to a good point where I tell people, it's like, look, man, if you're going to do RDS on a pistol, you need to make that philosophical jump.
Yep.
Right? If you don't make that philosophical jump, it will be a cool accoutrement on your gun, but you need to make that leap. If you need to make that leap, and I think one of the reasons why you picked up on it so quick is that, yeah, dude, you made the leap, and from there it just grew from leaps and bounds. Probably because you were at the class where, and then you came back, and then you were at the 2-day class where day 2 was just horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't you explain a little bit about that, and because I think that kind of formed some of the basis of why you are so adamant about things like your dot getting wet and fog and stuff like that. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So it rained all day long.
All day long.
I mean, it was relentless. I mean, it just rained and rained and rained, and every single person was still able to perform to the level, to the acceptable level of every single one of your classes. You know, the acceptable level of accuracy and performance didn't change on day 2 because it was raining versus day 1. And so there's this piece of equipment that is operating that I had 2 complete opposite days to work with, and it worked just as good day 2 as it did day 1. To a continued increasing level of performance, because your classes are clearly a skill building class, and that you're not just shooting drills day 2, you're still getting incrementally better on day 2. And so I watched everybody continue to get better on day 2 in elements of rain, wind, and so if people were still getting better on a day 2 with elements that have a psychological impact, they have a physical impact in your comfort level, they have an equipment impact, if that's an actual thing that exists, and everybody continued to get better. So with all 3 of those considerations, at the end of the day, everybody still left better than day 1. It gave me the firsthand knowledge to say that if anybody says otherwise, you're simply talking out your ass. And for what reason? That's kind of my biggest thing is that I hear all of these things that people say is like, well, my brother's cousin's sister's babysitter's cousin said that he couldn't shoot because the optic got wet. Okay, well, I know that to not be true. I can pull a video up and show you people of varying skill levels. I think that was the biggest thing for me was that there were varying levels of skill there, from very beginner to advanced shooter. And so if a very beginning shooter can perform those skills under those conditions, then somebody who's looking to transition to an RDS, or an agency that's looking to transition to RDS that already has a base level of skill, they should absolutely be able to do it.
Yep. Yeah, and for the audience, in day 2, you were doing things like shooting on the move, forward, backward, different types of movement, shooting on the move, forward and backward, while transitioning between 2 targets, all in an environment where it was windy, the temperature was changing, it led to fog, and obviously it was raining, so there's precipitation, and it was fucking cold, you know, and everybody performed to the appropriate level of skill, and no one died. I don't even think anybody stopped while they were shooting on the move because they couldn't make, out their dot. So cool. So then when did you start? You actually carry a red dot equipped pistol on duty. When did that start?
Right after that class.
Right after that class. Because, I mean,
I had already been shooting with it just on our range at the PD, just getting used to it. And I had a couple things that I needed to just confirm through the class that I knew that we were going to do in the class just from your curriculum. And then right immediately after that, I started carrying out a duty. That was the confirmation class that I was ready and at a level of skill that was equal to that of my iron sights. That was my line in the sand. Was that and what I tell departments is that it's not for everybody. I don't advocate force it on there, but I wasn't going to put a piece of equipment on there that was going to bring me back at all in skill level or in performance. And that class showed me that I was absolutely up to and past the level of performance that I had with my iron sighted gun.
Yeah, because we went through everything, every weather environment in that day. I mean, I think the only thing that we could have went through was maybe a hurricane and or a plague of locusts.
Yeah. Yep. That was about it. Yeah. Yeah. Occluded optic was the only thing that we didn't that we didn't get
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a sandstorm or
yeah. And at that point in day, don't go outside.
right,
Anyway,
right.
period.
Context, people,
Yeah,
context.
context. Yeah, if you got into a gunfight during a plague of locusts and a hurricane, you have made many wrong choices up until that point. I can't help you.
So then on the heels of your class, I then went to FBI firearms instructor school.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good
Yes.
segue. Yeah. Knock it
Yeah.
out.
Yes. Very good segue.
Yeah.
So I show up with my duty gun that has a dot on it. Now, when I looked at the FBI firearms school, all the curriculum, everything, it said your duty gun. It had no restrictions on anything. And so I showed up with a dot gun. And the instructors all kind of like looked at each other and were like, so what are we going to do here? And I was like, hey, man, look, this is my duty gun. They'd never seen one on the line before. They'd never seen an instructor come in with one before. And I just laid it out for them. Then I said, hey, look, man, I'm looking at this at an instructor level. I'm a up to speed end user at this point with in various considerations of things. And so now I want to look at this from an instructor standpoint. How can I start to train cops in this area and transition departments through different considerations and things like that with a dot gun? I just got done being a student, and so now let's flip this script right now and look at how I can be an instructor in considerations of transitioning. And so they were like, all right, well, we may change it in the future, but for now, let's go ahead and get at it and see how things go. And things went pretty well. Um,
Well, dude, it's go ahead, dude. Knock it out. How'd you do?
I ended up taking top shot in the class um,
Nice.
of a class of phenomenal shooters. The FBI, I was very happy that I got to go to FBI firearms instructor school. It's a very challenging school. It's not a hand me down. It's not a hand me certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely have to perform. Oh, you have to perform on demand. We started with a full class and we did not end with a full class. So it's absolutely an earned instructor certificate with great shooters.
So what does that mean? Like if you don't hit a standard, like, hey man, thanks for coming, you don't need to come back, or is it a matter of do they got to go over and they ring the bell and they say I'm out?
No, it's just hey, you don't need to come back tomorrow.
Oh man, that's even worse, dude. At least give
Yeah.
me a
So
chance to give
the
up. Jeez.
first set of qual I think was either Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
And you just didn't continue. And then Friday is the FBI Bullseye course. So like then the first one, it's like, hey, if you can't meet this, you're probably not going to increase to the level that you need for the Bullseye course at the end. So hey, thanks for coming out. You're of course eligible to come back at some point, but there's no point in continuing. And then the last day, pre-graduation, you got to shoot the Bullseye course, and you can go all the way to Friday, shoot the Bullseye course, and not pass it in their amount of times, and not complete the course.
Mm, outstanding. So then you took another step further, right? And you started, like you said before, advocating or at least helping to facilitate departments going to the dot,
Yeah,
right?
so
And
that was kind of a result of FBI instructor course as well. I was as an instructor course, you have to do like a teach back sort of thing, and I of course with my medical background tried to just cheat and use like a range medical thing that I already had done.
mm-hmm.
When I went up to the lead instructor and told him what it was, he was like, "Nope, you want to carry a red dot pistol? You're going to convince us all why we should carry red dot pistols. That's your presentation." So I was like, "Oh, um, okay, cool."
Yeah, yeah.
And so I put a full presentation together to convince people why the transition to a red dot pistol would be an appropriate thing for law enforcement and patrol officers to do. Coincidentally, at the exact same time, Aaron Collin was completing his white paper on MRDS use. And so I just finished it. Graduation was like Friday with the teach backs. I did the whole thing. And then I think like, might have even been like on that Friday or Saturday, Aaron was like, hey, I'm completing this white paper. If anybody's doing this out there, has information that wants to be included on the paper, holler at me. So I was like, hey man, I coincidentally just finished doing a full PowerPoint presentation thing for FBI Firearms Instructor School. I'd be down. And so I ended up getting listed, I think, close to the top of that white paper. Started to offer it out there to departments and to officers who wanted to try to make the jump to be used.
Yeah.
There was nothing in there that was proprietary information. None of it was any sort of intellectual property that I invented. Certainly, none of this was new or groundbreaking. But to some people, it is groundbreaking, and it is new. I think we get into this idea that just because somebody's giving information out that's been given or said before, that there's this necessity to say, well, it's not new. It might be to somebody.
Well, let's talk about that, because you and I had conversations about that, right? Of some holy right that if somebody says something once, then no one else can repeat that information because they're either stealing it or blah blah blah. Look, party people, the bottom line is, if it's good information, get it out there. Just get it out there, right? Because just because one person said something, he may have reached 1 million people. Well, that's not everybody.
Right.
It's not everybody. I mean, people bring articles to my attention all the time. I had no clue that thing was written 3 years ago. But guess what? The body works the way the body works. The firearms work the way they work. If people are going to have the same idea based on concepts. They're not stealing from each other. You and Cowan were working on basically the same project at different times, right? I don't think you had even met Aaron before at that time.
I had not.
Yeah.
I had not. No. I didn't for years later. I mean, it was a year before I even met him. In person, but they absolutely complemented each other. At the end of my presentation, I contacted him and said, hey, look, man, I'm going to start pushing this out to departments because it's in a presentable format. This is coming out at the same time. Obviously, you're Aaron Collin of Sage Dynamics, and I'm, who the fuck is that guy? So do you have any issue with me putting this out there and then linking your information? He was like, get it out there, man. That's why my paper exists. And so in all of that, in my presentation is the link to his paper. Right in there, because it's about accessibility of information. What good does it do for me to have all of this firsthand information if I'm not going to make it accessible to somebody else, especially in the law enforcement community where we're really just stealing everything from everybody else anyways. There's probably one original policy manual out there that was written by some department that literally everybody just stole from everybody else and changed the name of their department and probably missed it at some point in a copy and paste, replace all. Changed it for their use. So why would we not be saturating everywhere with good information? I think it's important that if it can be attributed to somebody originally, that it should be. I'm a huge believer in that. If there's a drill or something that was originally done by somebody, then you should be sourcing credit to that person. I absolutely believe in that. But things like a wet or a flogged optic or something, putting information out there on that, it should be out there. That's all there is to it, because there are people who are saying that it's a factor. It's a mitigating factor, and I think that comes into the accessibility of information versus training. I think there's a difference between information and training.
Yep. Nothing new under the sun, just new ways to relate that information. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I won't go into that, but anyway.
I think that one of the things though that there needs to be caution at though in putting information out there is that information isn't training.
Yeah.
And so a YouTube video isn't training. Training is taking that information and adding context, contingencies, and considerations of environment, equipment, and ability, and confirming the information that you had. The idea that you can watch a video on something and then perform that skill at a duty or life-saving level is irresponsible. And so I think that people just need to realize that watching a YouTube video it's not training. It's information that you need to go out and confirm for yourself in the environment you work in, with the context that you are dealt with. The more information that we have, the better it is to do all those sort of things, and the more likely I think people are to go out and train. I think that the more information that's accessible out there, the more connections we make in people's brains to their everyday life and what they need to be doing, the more likely we are then to drive people to come out and train with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting back to your work, I think that your presentation is a incredible companion to Aaron's study. Because I mean, your PowerPoint now is what, 15 slides?
Yeah, about that. 15
about
to 17
that.
slides.
Yeah, 15 to 17 slides. It's a living document, so it's increasing, right?
Oh, sure.
Where Aaron's, I believe, pushes 85 pages.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yep.
Now it's big font, pictures, yada yada. But I think the reason why and again, I'm not a cop. I just know a lot of them. In that they give your presentation to the sergeant or the captain or the brass, right, who's got a limited window of time to comprehend something, and then you give Cowans, if they want backup information for a bean counter or a city council or whatever that needs to approve
a policy division,
division. Then here you go. Here's your 85 pages. I will say one thing that I think Bill Blowers needs to somewhat publish his little presentation that he did at OTOA, because his part of it is the nuggets in there is like, and if those entities don't pass, here's how you get back at them and sue city council for Americans with Disabilities Act, and how you get red dots for your unit, man. It's genius. Those three things put together, if you need them, I would hate to be the bureaucrat that tries to argue against putting that as part of the equipment budget. So, okay, so moving on, right? So you're a cop. You carry it on duty. What's out there? What do you want to say to other law enforcement officers or agencies that are thinking about giving it a try? And what are the common misconceptions or doubts that they have that you want to dispel? Whatever you want to say, dude.
I think the biggest thing is try it. Shoot it.
But why should they, bro? Why should they? I mean, we know, you and I know it's a force multiplier, but why should some dude in Main Road, USA, throw an optic on there?
I truly think that it's going to enhance your abilities. Just simply looking at the focal plane issue of things and the amount of more information you can take in while utilizing your firearm, especially in split-second decisions. One of the things that's in my state curriculum is a judgment shooting section scenario. It's a shoot, no shoot sort of thing. And I think that the increased ability to utilize an optic in first focal plane, looking at the target, remaining on the target the whole time, allows your brain to act a lot faster. I think it allows you to act a lot more correctly as well, just simply by the fact that you're taking one thing into consideration, and that's science. There's no opinion on that. There simply can't be. If your eyes are looking at one thing, and then your dot is essentially superimposed over that, it's better to only have to be looking at one thing, especially when you look at use of force decisions. And does this person need to be shot or do they not? And I think that especially as we age, there's nothing that we can do about our eyes. We can wear glasses and things like that, but we still may be straining to see the front sight. We still may be straining to see how our rear sight corresponds with our front sight and the target itself. And so, if we can have an advantage in that arena of things automatically, no matter what, put it on there. I can see better. Why not? Why wouldn't we? There's nothing you can do about that. That's not a skills thing. If I can't see, I can't see. But if I can put an optic on it and I can suddenly see better and do my job better and qualify easier and shoot better, why would we not be doing that? It's simply the evolution of the sight.
Yeah. So what about that one that cancer of an article? Not the article. The responses were cancer, right? That Police One article that was posted up. And again, you can mention where the genesis of that article came from. I'm not going to steal your thunder on that one, but one of the responses when they posted that, I think it was on Facebook, was